Welcome to today's webinar on Interchange. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. Just before I hand over to today's host, just run through a couple of housekeeping areas with you. Mics and cameras will be off for all participants apart from the presenters, as will the chat function, but we do have our Q&A section, which is available throughout the webinar. So please submit any questions that you have for any of the presenters ready for our Q&A section at the end of the webinar. Any questions that aren't answered during the webinar will be answered after the webinar and sent out to all attendees. This will be alongside a recording of the webinar, so if everyone can't stay for the full hour, there will be a recording, so anything that be missed will be sent out to you. If you have any technical issues, as I said, the chat function isn't available, but please submit a question in the area and our admins will be able to help you. But I think we are probably ready to start the webinar, so I will hand over to today's host, which is Ben Lucock. He is the Interchange project lead for the Nuclear Skills Plan.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Hannah. I think my first duty was to introduce myself, but that's been done. So thank you very much. And thank you to everyone for joining. Welcome to this webinar, which is part of a series covering the National Nuclear Strategic Plan for Skills. And our focus today is on interchange. Let me move on to our first slide. The strategy sets out how the UK government and nuclear industry will work in partnership to ensure we continue to have the nuclear workforce needed to deliver clean energy and to protect the nation. By 2030, we anticipate an additional 40,000 new roles will need to be created across the sector. So the plan will support the nuclear sector by growing the workforce, one that is motivated, recognised and inspired. And this is vital both to our national security and energy resilience. So as you can see on the slide here, alongside programmes to do many things such as increasing the number of apprenticeships and graduates entering the workforce, supporting career switchers or funding PhDs, are also plans to invest in the existing workforce. And Interchange is one of those plans. Move on to the next slide. Through the Interchange project, we're seeking to increase opportunities for skilled workers to develop themselves and their careers, and also to help retain specialist skills as workers choose to remain within the sector. So we're supporting organisations and professional communities to identify, create and deliver interchange opportunities. These may be secondments or exchanges lasting several months, or they might be much shorter interventions such as shadowing, mentoring or skills exchange. The main structure that we've put in place to help organisations do this is the Nuclear Hub. Already, several organisations within the sector have joined, and these are both defence and civil nuclear industry partners, government departments, the Royal Navy, and academic and other institutions. So at this point, I'm going to hand over to Sophie Brooke from the Government Office for Science to say a little bit more about the Hub model. Sophie, over to you.
Thank you, Ben. Hi everyone, my name is Sophie Brooke. I am the Knowledge Exchange Lead at the Government Office for Science, and I run on a programme called STEM Features. And part of STEM Features is the Nuclear Hub, which I'm going to talk a bit more about today. So collaboration has always been key to scientific discovery and innovation, and something that should be embedded across sectors to maximise success. STEM Features is the mechanism that the GSE profession at Go Science are delivering, and this is to promote and facilitate the collaboration and aims to provide knowledge exchange opportunities, best practice and capability across government, industry and academia. To participate and become a partner, organisations must sign the Central Framework Agreement. This outlines the parameters for any knowledge exchange opportunities, with the key benefits being that it reduces the administration needed to set up opportunities, and it removes administrative barriers to knowledge exchange between organisations. Any specific arrangements beyond what is in the Framework Agreement are agreed on a case-by-case basis, but the Framework Agreement is what essentially provides a foundation to flexible and seamless collaboration. Operating in this way means that STEM Features enables organisations to boost their capability and provide their individuals with opportunities to learn from other sectors. Our partner organisations have increased from approximately 18 in July last year to the 40 that we currently have today. We've got quite an even spread of partners across government, industry and academia, and as we expand and embed the scheme, we expect the number of partners to grow quite rapidly in the coming months. Some of our most recent organisations to join STEM Features include UKRI, the Office for Nuclear Regulation, Babcock, National Skills Academy Nuclear, and the Submarine Delivery Agency. So partners can use the terms and conditions in the framework agreement to set up any opportunity with another partner. But a really good way to identify and develop these opportunities are to participate in the STEM Features hubs. A hub groups partners from across the sectors into communities of interest, and these are aligned with thematic technical areas. Those involved meet on a regular basis to develop knowledge exchange opportunities, and these can range from secondments and placements through to visit days and attending events. Partners can engage with as many or as few hubs as suits their organisation, but it is recommended to nominate a hub representative with subject expertise for at least one to reap the benefits of the scheme. We currently have 7 hubs on the scheme, focusing on different sectors and different ways of working, and they are data, reliability, systems thinking, and WOMI, which stands for Weapons, Ordnance, Munitions and Explosives. The decarbonisation hub has been introduced in response to partner feedback, and as a strategic government priority, the Quantum Hub has just been launched. And we're now also approaching the launch of the Nuclear Hub, which has been driven forward to address the nuclear sector skills challenge, and I'll talk a little bit more about that shortly. With the introduction of these new hubs, we are seeing lots of new partners join STEM Features, building a much broader network and reaching whole sectors. So it's a really exciting time to join and participate in the hubs, connect with new organisations and develop new opportunities. To give you a bit more information on what successful activity has taken place through the hubs, I thought I would provide you with a few examples of how all the hubs operate in different ways, and that's depending on what suits the needs of their hub representatives. For the data hub, the representatives were not familiar with each other or their specific areas of work at first, so they focused on building their relationships in the meetings, starting with spotlights on each of their organisations, their areas of expertise, areas of work where there is increased interest, and high-level ideas for future opportunities. This supported the group in identifying broad subject areas of overlap, and their hub leads facilitated this further by developing a master secondment list. All the hub representatives have shared access, so they list secondments that they're looking to set up, gather interest within their organisation, and identify potential secondees to support in the matching of interested parties with the relevant contacts to set the secondment up. They currently meet every other month to review their tracker, share best practice, and have supported each other with workshops and gaining professional recognition. The WOMI Hub have recently set up a placement between DSTL and Chemring. The Hub representative for DSTL recognised that the team in their organisation who contributed to the Spiral Development Project may benefit from seeing how that work was carried forward at Chemring countermeasures. The placement provided the individuals with a greater understanding of where their work sits more broadly within the wider sector. And then finally, the System Thinking Hub, which operates very differently. They have more of an open forum, and it doesn't particularly focus on placements and secondments, but rather an opportunity to problem solve and build capacity. So their meetings cover a range of different topics each month, and they've also attended events together with the topic of the following meeting being to debrief on the key learnings from that event. So as I mentioned earlier, the Nuclear Hub is launching imminently, and the Nuclear team have been instrumental in identifying suitable partners and supporting with the onboarding process. The first meeting is due to take place in December, and there'll be representation from government, industry and academia. And given the number of new sign-ups and organisations across the sector being driven by collaboration and skills, we expect this to be one of the biggest and most active STEM Features hubs. The overall aim is to help build the skills needed for the future and improve mobility within the nuclear sector. And again, like the other hubs, the hub representatives can very much shape how they would like to utilise this community. So just to summarise STEM Features, organisations participating means that there'll be improved resilience in scarce skills disciplines, Recruitment and retention targets can be met by offering individuals flexible learning and development opportunities, and there'll be an increase in cross-sector connections. The hubs are an excellent way to facilitate this model and support a whole range of interchange at any career level. All the participants are STEM Futures partners, so in the hubs, the already signed framework agreement can be utilised straight away, and that momentum of interchange, which is sometimes lacking, can be maintained and embedded. If your organisation is already a partner, I encourage you to engage with the scheme and explore the range of collaborative opportunities with other partners through your partner or hub representatives, or equally become a hub rep yourself if you would like to be, if you'd like to have a more active role in interchange for your organisation. Likewise, if you're interested in signing your organisation up to STEM Futures so that you can contribute to new or existing hubs, including the Nuclear Hub, or you'd just like to hear more about the incredible benefits of the scheme more widely, please do contact the GSEP team using the STEM Futures inbox. As I say, it's a really exciting time to join, and we're keen to get more departments and organisations involved. Thank you very much, and I'll be sticking around for the Q&A session if there are any questions.
Great stuff. Thank you very, very much, Sophie. There's a lot of information in there, and also crucially those contact points at the end. So we will be sharing, as Hannah said at the start, information with all of you who are participating, who've joined us today after the webinar. There'll be a few other contact points in later slides as well. So we will share all of those with you. Great. So what we're going to do now is hear from three individuals who will talk about their experience and interest in Interchange. First of all, we have Gillian Donaghy, who is Head of Resource Project, Marine and Technology at Babcock International Group. Gillian's going to talk a little bit about why Babcock is so interested in interchange opportunities. After Gillian, we'll hear from two colleagues who are currently on Interchange, on secondments, so we'll hear a bit more about their personal experiences. That's Jamie and Emma. But first of all, over to you, please, Gillian. Thanks.
Thanks, Ben, and thanks, Sophie. So as Ben has said, I'm Gillian Donaghy, and I'm the Head of Resourcing Projects at Babcock International Group. I'm going to start by telling you a little bit about myself, my role, and Babcock. Then I'll tell you about our experience of signing up to STEM Futures and the Nuclear Hub, the benefits for Babcock of being involved, and how we plan to utilise interchanges. My career has predominantly been in the world of recruitment and resourcing. I studied a fairly unique combination of business management, politics, and music at university. I am not sure what career would most benefit from that mix of courses, but then I completed a postgrad in HR. I spent many years on the leadership team of one of Scotland's oldest independent recruitment agencies, where we had branches across the central belt of Scotland. When I started working in the world of recruitment, it was very different to how it is now. It's transformed over the duration of my career. It's pretty amazing to think how differently we do things now that we have networked computers, email, websites, mobile phones, direct messaging, recruitment software, sophisticated analytics tools, AI, and more. Anyway, I'm still based in Scotland, and I started my career with Babcock in Scotland about 16 years ago. Although I've been at Babcock for a long time, many of my colleagues have been there for much longer, with many starting as apprentices and developing their careers in various directions and locations at Babcock. So I'm part of the resourcing team, where we support a wide range of locations and business areas. I've been involved in various resourcing projects, which have all ultimately focused on helping us to deliver a great resourcing service to the business. Working in the nuclear sector, where there are recognised skills shortages, there have always been plenty of challenges to work through, so it's been a rewarding career. At times over the years, I've collaborated with some of our industry partners to look at how to resource people for projects we're working on. But more recently, one of the areas I've been increasingly involved in has been looking at how Babcock can work with industry and government departments to second people between organisations. So that's secondments from Babcock to other organisations and vice versa. I've been the Babcock lead in the Nuclear Interchange Hub for about a year, working with Shona, Ben and others to consider what we could do to encourage interchanges across the sector. So let's move on, and I'll give you a flavour of what Babcock does. So our purpose is creating a safe and secure world together. Babcock is an international defence company operating in our focus countries of the UK, Australasia, Canada, France and South Africa, with exports to additional markets with potential to become focus countries. We meet our customers' key requirements of affordability, availability and capability. We provide frontline and equipment support, training, product design, manufacture and integration, and technology and systems to defence, security and civil markets. If you want to find out more about what we do, feel free to see the website at babcockinternational.com or follow us on LinkedIn. So why did Babcock decide to sign up to STEM Futures and the Nuclear Hub? We officially signed up to STEM Futures a couple of months ago, but we were already committed to Interchanges and the Nuclear Hub prior to that. We can see the value in Interchanges, and I'll talk more about that later. Babcock is on the board of the Nuclear Skills Delivery Group, and we're committed to the objectives of the NNSPS, that's the National Nuclear Strategic Plan for Skills. One of Babcock's principles is collaborate, and for many years we've worked closely with government departments and industry partners, to the extent that earlier this month Babcock won 2 top awards at the Institute for Collaborative Working Awards at the House of Lords, no less. Our major infrastructure projects team were recognised for their effective collaboration and close working relations with the Submarine Delivery Agency, wider supply chain and their delivery partners. We've supported interchanges with government departments and industry partners at various levels from graduates, technical experts and right up to director level. Earlier this year, prior to signing up to the STEM Futures Agreement, we committed to supporting a new industry partner by offering to supplement their team with specialist skills seconded in from Babcock. We needed to reach agreement with them on how this would work, and it could be a time-consuming process to document secondment agreements. It required input from resourcing, HR, financial, commercial and legal colleagues, and this all takes time to set up. We recognise that if organisations are signed up to a framework agreement, it would be much simpler and quicker to set up interchanges between organisations. So when Babcock were invited to sign up, we reviewed the standard framework agreement from STEM Futures and felt it was pretty comprehensive. It covered everything we expected, and we liked the flexibility of being able to cover any other points in a much shorter additional document if we need to. That provides the comfort we need to get involved. We were offered as much support as we needed during the sign-up process, and any queries we had were quickly resolved. For example, we wanted some clarification about how salary costs would be covered during interchanges and to understand if there were commitments we would need to make in terms of volumes of secondments and interchanges. We know that we can decide on a case-by-case basis how employee salary costs should be covered for each interchange. It doesn't necessarily have to be a direct swap with another organisation where no money changes hands. It could be an interchange where the costs are agreed up front. And we were reassured that we're not committed to an interchange if it simply doesn't work for us. Once we signed up, we had a call with the STEM Futures team, who provided an overview about what the other work streams are focusing on, and some of our colleagues have recently joined them. So what do we see as the benefits for Babcock? Interchanges offer skills and knowledge exchange between organisations, and they support partnerships and collaborative working between organisations. That's one of our principles, so we're signed up to that. They enhance the skills and experience of our workforce in a related field, which enables employees to pick up new perspectives and widen their networks. We can offer interchange opportunities to people from other organisations who bring fresh eyes with them, ideas and suggestions. We believe that our ability to offer interchanges will become part of our employee value proposition, which will support talent attraction activities. And we expect that by offering secondment opportunities, this will be a useful retention tool for Babcock. The level of interest we've had in secondments and the feedback we've had from employees shows that our employees appreciate the opportunity to consider secondments at other organisations. But we'll hear more about the benefits of interchanges from an employee perspective from other presenters on today's webinar. And as the Babcock lead in the Nuclear Interchange Hub, personally, I found it beneficial to extend my network and be involved in looking at how we can encourage the use of interchanges across the UK. So how do Babcock plan to mobilise interchanges and enable staff to make use of them? As I've mentioned, we're already on that journey to facilitating interchanges with a number of people already seconded to other organisations that we work with. But we're actively working with some additional government departments to look at seconding some of their employees into Babcock. And we'll be looking at what interchange opportunities Babcock could offer to employees of organisations who sign up, where they're keen to build on their experience through an interchange to Babcock. As more organisations have been signing up to the framework agreement, we'll be collaborating with them to look at the interchange process and how to utilise interchanges effectively. To support this change in approach, we've been reviewing the secondment process internally and supporting guidance for both employees and managers to enable us to formalise the interchange process and the data and reporting on interchanges available to the business. Over time, we'll develop case studies to help raise awareness to our workforce of how interchanges work in practice. So I hope that's given you a helpful insight as to why Babcock have been involved in the Nuclear Interchange Hub. And if your organisation is thinking about getting more involved, perhaps this might offer the reassurance that you're not committed to anything you may not want to do, but to offer some good opportunities. On that note, I'll hand back to Ben.
Brilliant. Gillian, thank you very much indeed for sharing that perspective from Babcock. I have to say it's very, very impressive to hear of the thought that your organisation has given to Interchange, the opportunities that you see within it, and how you're taking that forward both as a company yourself, but also in partnership with others. So thank you for sharing all of that. As you have just said, we will also now hear from a couple of individuals who talk about their experience on Interchange, on secondment. First of all, we're going to go to Emma Gresswell. Emma is a climate science advisor working within the Science Innovation for Climate and Energy team at the Department for Energy Security and Net Zero. And Emma's parent organisation is Ricardo, which is a global climate, transport and energy consultancy. So Emma, over to you. Thanks.
Fantastic. Thanks, Ben. And my first list was to introduce myself, so thank you for doing that. But yes, as Ben said, my name is Emma Gresswell, and I'm seconded from Ricardo into the climate science team within SICE, which is, as Ben says, the directorate within the Department of Energy Security and Net Zero, which I will refer to as DESNES, just so I don't end up waffling on for too long. So today I thought I'd provide a short overview of my background, a bit about my role at my home organisation, Ricardo, then also about my current role on secondment, a few reflections on why I chose to undertake a secondment, sort of thinking behind that, and then as well as looking at the benefits to both my home organisation and the department itself. So I've actually now been on secondment since October last year. And the role comes to an end in March 2025. So it's actually going to be about 1.5 years in length, quite a long one. And in terms of my own personal background, so I previously studied environmental science at the University of Leeds, and then went on to study sustainable development at the University of Sussex for my master's. And I've been at Ricardo for around about 4 years. And Ricardo is an environmental consultancy. And so within the business, I sit within the sustainability business area within our programs team. So previously at Ricardo, I worked on large grant-funded programs for organisations actually such as DESNES and Innovate UK. And I worked closely with several local authorities across the UK. One big programme was the Social Housing Decarbonisation Fund. This was ensuring retrofits aligned with regulations such as PAS 2035, and also working closely with project teams to ensure they had efficient strategies for tenant engagement and things like that. And my current role, I'm currently seconded into the climate science team, and this is to deliver a programme called CS Now. This stands for Climate Services for a Net Zero Resilient World. And it's a 4-year research programme, and it delivers the latest scientific research to evidence gaps and to support policy development. In my role, I actually work between an academic consortium, and this is institutions across the UK, which includes UCL, the UK Centre for Ecology and Hydrology, and the Tyndall Centre for Climate Change. And I work with this team to actually deliver the research projects. And then I also pivot between the policy teams across the department, other departments, to ensure the research outputs can feed in appropriately to their decision making and their policy making needs. So the programme is now actually in its final year of delivery. So a key part of my role at the moment is to focus on dissemination of these outputs and to make sure they're actually being accessed and used by the people who need them, but also then to get published on gov.uk. So it's been really interesting to understand, jumping through the hoops in terms of what's needed for publication. Whilst preparing this year, I thought I'd reflect a little bit in terms of why I undertook a secondment. Because, yeah, it was quite an interesting opportunity that I hadn't heard a great deal of before. And so, as I said, I had previously worked quite a lot with DESNZ to deliver these grant-funded programmes, but was interested really to understand how the outputs and the small amount of the programme that I was involved in at the time influenced and, I guess, was influenced by government policy. So I got quite excited by the fact there was an opportunity to gain a greater insight and understanding of how research and policy interact and influence one another. Because as you all know, and I'm sure I'm aware, there's a huge amount of climate news in the media, obviously both good and bad. But I love the fact that I'm now in a team that works to develop solutions and actually interact with these really complex challenges that you hear and you see talked about every day. I feel like my role currently is making a real difference in the world and advancing the understanding of and around climate science. I've really enjoyed how the role has allowed me to have oversight of this whole end-to-end process. So from working closely with policy teams to identify their research needs, and then working with the academic consortium to build a research project that actually directly addresses these needs. So once projects are complete, I then work closely with the policy teams themselves to ensure, as I say, these outputs do have maximum impact. And so whether this is feeding into consultations or government commitments or updates to market. And it's really, exciting, exciting for me anyway, to see how what was originally just a thought or an ask is then developed into a full-blown research project. And actually you then get to see that final end stage for influencing policy development and policy implementation. Now, I'm sure secondment lengths and types will vary, so depending on your department and your team, but I can provide a very brief overview of my experience in applying through my home organisation. And because CS Now is the research programme is delivered by Ricardo for the climate science team, it was actually advertised internally. And following the application, I had an interview with several members of the DESNZ climate science team to understand what I currently deliver and what I could bring to the team. And after I secured the role, I actually went through a really helpful new starter induction, which provided a great level of insight into government processes and ways of working. And I've now been fully integrated into the team. And I'd definitely say the toughest part of the whole experience is navigating two laptops. It's once you feel like you've overcome one email inbox, you slightly want to ignore the second. That's only a minor reflection. Thought it would also be useful to reflect on the benefits on both to Ricardo, my home organisation, and to the department itself. So looking first at Ricardo, it's the ability to gain a better understanding of ways of working with the client and to ensure that we're actually offering services that are useful and they are relevant, and really to see that, I guess, in practice. It's been really useful to understand the types of outputs and end products that are most valuable. And so, for instance, with these research programs, very short, snappy policy briefs are definitely favoured, over long, quite dense reports. And whilst my background is in environmental science, I've definitely expanded my knowledge in specific areas of working with different parts of the climate science team. For instance, looking at greenhouse gas removals and the biomass team. And I've also worked with the international climate science team. And this has been really interesting to understand how negotiations teams operate. So obviously most recently we've had COP29 and getting a sort of insight into this and the processes behind these events is fascinating. So I've personally loved that constant learning and level of exposure, but it also means I can then take these learnings back with me to Ricardo. And so I will go back to my role at Ricardo in April next year. And it'd be really helpful actually having a clear understanding of departmental priorities, but also now having built up several working relationships, both with government but also non-government organisations. As I said, there's also several benefits to the department itself. So whilst at Ricardo, alongside obviously developing my technical skills, also received specific training on project and programme management. I've been able to apply and share useful ways of working and efficiencies to support policy teams across the department. And it also ensured these academic outputs and projects are delivered to time. And I've used my experience in programme delivery to work with the teams to develop realistic timelines. And I think that's a really important part of the co-creation stage at project development, and also help translate academic insights and outputs into useful policy tools. My role is also quite unique in the way that I work with several teams, both within the department but also externally. And I've actually been able to develop a key contacts list for the climate science team. Several of the work packages we've developed have been cross-governmental and work with different departments, and it's been really interesting to understand how different departments operate, but also opportunities to find more ways to work together. Then I just thought I'd finish with a few general reflections from my experience. I've been really lucky to work with such a diverse and friendly team who were super welcoming from day one, and I've learned a huge amount from. I was also really lucky to witness a change in government whilst I've been in role, and this was fascinating to see how overnight, pretty much, you can have a change in leadership and just the huge level of commitment, I guess, of colleagues across the civil service to adapt and to reframe, that continue with their work. Yeah, it was a really interesting experience. And the new government has also shown a great level of interest in the climate science team's work, which is really exciting to see. I definitely recommend the experience to anyone considering a secondment, as it provides a great opportunity to try out a slightly different role, but in a completely different environment. And I've loved working with a new team in a new office, but also still being connected with my colleagues at Ricardo. So I think that's about it. So thank you very much, and happy to answer any questions on my experience. And I'll hand back to Ben.
Great stuff, Emma. Thank you very much indeed. That was a really, really kind of vivid description of your time with DESNZ, and thank you very much for sharing both what you took to DESNZ from Ricardo and what you anticipate bringing back as well. It was also hugely positive, apart from the 2 laptops point, which I experienced myself. So thank you very much for sharing that. You've also reminded us, as Hannah has, that there's an opportunity to pose questions in the Q&A section. So we've got our final speaker in a moment, Jamie, but I do encourage people to pop a few questions in there, and then we'll address those as a group after Jamie. Great. So with that, I'll hand over to Jamie Martin, who is a naval officer and currently seconded to the Nuclear Skills Strategy team. So one of my colleagues. And Jamie, over to you to talk about that experience. Thank you.
Thanks, Ben. Yeah. Yes, I'm Jamie Martin. Yeah, as Ben said, I'm one of the project leads on the Nuclear Sector Skills team that is delivering the National Nuclear Skills Plan on behalf of the sector. Yeah, I'm a naval officer, so employed by the Royal Navy. I'm probably, you describe me as mid-career, being that I could stay a lot longer, but careers in the Royal Navy tend to be quite variable. So equally, I could be at the end of my career. But I've done 12 years already after joining as a marine engineer from uni, straight from uni, and then subsequently studying postgrad nuclear engineering. In the Navy, previously, I've largely focused on submarine engineering and training specialism. So I've done various different roles in the Navy specifically, and then in wider defence, but around training schools, predominantly human resource orientated, but also with a firm focus on the procurement of training for current and future submarine capabilities. So that's probably what you describe as my area of expertise, is training, procurement, and defence. So that was my previous job before Interchange. My job for the next 2 years, I've done 5 months of the 2 years, but for 2 years Interchange, is in the skills team to lead 2 projects. The projects are training focused. I won't go into too much detail, but the projects are, the first one is around the optimization of the training landscape, which is very broad. It's focusing on the training providers that deliver skills to the sector, or skilled people to the sector, and how we can increase their capacity and capability over the next decade in order to allow the sector to grow as we expect it to grow with the various different aspects that are incoming. The second one's much more specific and probably you describe as smaller, but it's sort of a mini interchange in itself, but it's focusing on sector experts, so people that are much closer to the end of their career and hold a lot of knowledge and experience, and using them within schools, colleges and unis to really bolster that capability and the capacity within those schools. But it's much shorter term and much more focused. So yeah, as Emma did, I'll run through the how it came about, and then look at the benefits and a bit of self-reflection at the end. But my secondment, my interchange came about for a bit of a strange way. I was going through various different jobs, and I was in a central London-based operational role at the start of the year when the opportunity came up. And little did I know it sort of came out of my boss, the First Sea Lord, being in a meeting to do with the nuclear skills plan, and basically himself committing the Navy to supporting within the team. So it was quite nice. He didn't name me personally because he hadn't been selected yet, but I still feel like the head of the organisation nominated me directly. But eventually this fed down through the HR systems, and someone on a desk sort of aligned my experience and skills on the system as being a good fit for this secondment. And it just so happened it was a very good fit for me as well. Because the NNSPS in itself was quite at an early stage, the relationship with Interchange, the Interchange project in itself hadn't really been set up. So the formal method with which an interchange might be managed in future just didn't exist at that point, or did, but we didn't know about it. So so my experience of setting up the secondment is actually there was a lot of communication required between the organisations, between the individuals involved, in order to make it happen. So it was very laborious. And that sort of goes back to Gillian's, the benefits of setting this up as a formal process is that this can happen a lot more seamlessly and a lot more frictionless. So personally, I chose to do this partly to get away from the operational role, which was taking its toll on me. It was very intense up in London. But I see this secondment as being very developmental for me. It opens up loads and loads of aspects of the nuclear sector that I just don't have access to in the Navy, because for obvious reasons we're focused on submarines, we're focused on defence. So getting outside of my little stovepipe within the sector to look at a lot more broadly was really, really important to me. And even though I had a little bit of experience working across government departments with the Home Office and with the Department for Levelling Up Housing Communities, which is a bit of a random one, I even got involved with that and wouldn't necessarily be typical of a naval officer. This is a really good opportunity to see much more broader across government, across government civil and private nuclear. The job in itself is leadership, is project leads. It's quite typical from what we would do within defence, but the scale of budget, the responsibility placed upon me, and the autonomy was all really attractive to me to do this role. The public visibility even is much more than what you get within the Royal Navy, because we have that sort of boundary where we have to go through official challenge, and all the outward facing is normally done by a separate team, so you just don't have the chance to be that public face. And I suppose lastly for me, but quite importantly for me, I've got a young family, so the working from home aspect and the flexibility of which I can work in this role is completely different from what I can manage within the Royal Navy. As you can probably imagine, the Royal Navy is quite restrictive, quite domineering on your time and when you can be available to your family and commit to things like that. So just with not having a guarantee over the next years, I could have been in an office job 5 miles down the road from my house, but equally I could have been based in the desert somewhere or on a ship. So that guarantee and flexibility around my family is hugely valuable to me, and I'm definitely enjoying the 5 months so far. I'm not sure whether I'll be able to go back. In terms of getting into the bit that was quite hard to think about in the self-reflection, without making my ego too big and my head growing outside of the sort of the lens of my camera on my laptop, I was looking at the benefits of me to the organisations and the benefits of this interchange. And I think Gillian absolutely covered loads of them themselves, so I'm just going to touch on the ones that are specific to me and around me. I think important for the nuclear sector team is my experience within the submarine defence areas. We are a very mixed team, so there's not necessarily that direct experience of operating on a submarine, for example. So being able to have that experience within the team delivering this nuclear skills plan is just it's on the tip of my tongue. You can't shut me up talking about submarines. So it's good to be able to bring that to the team now. But equally, my experiences within the skills team, I'll be able to bring back in future roles within the Navy, and it'll be hugely valuable with those insights. Navy specifically, as I chatted about my working from home and the flexibility around my young family, actually the Navy probably retained me in a way they wouldn't have if this opportunity hadn't come up. I was quite willing to leave the Navy as a requirement to work around my family. So being able to offer this as an opportunity and a much more broadening, flexible opportunity to me, they probably retained me and be able to use me in future roles. So not only am I bringing back that developed leadership, the project management acumen that hopefully I'll pick up through this role, actually I'll be coming back, and that might be key. The team and the sector, I think, there'll be obvious benefits in collaboration and bringing different perspectives and my knowledge within specifically defence and submarines. But the Navy will learn from those broader knowledge of the sector and the supply chains out with what you would do, and I suppose specifically on the civil nuclear side that it just doesn't touch on because it doesn't need to. And then sort of key, but working in a joint pan-sector team, we are forced to straddle. We're working with people from the other areas and within private companies. And this is really important, especially as we try to deliver the sector-wide NNSBS, because there's a lot of there's differences between different areas of the sector, but working together is going to be key to deliver some of the benefits. So having a team that is thrown together from every corner of the sector is hugely valuable. And yeah, selfishly, it just makes me more employable at the end. So I'm happy that it might draw me a greater salary and whatever I choose to do in future. But that's all from me, and back to Ben.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Jamie, for sharing those personal reflections on what you're bringing to our team. And I endorse everything you say about you bring a lot more, of course, as well as you were being too modest. Your head did not expand beyond the little screen, but also the things that you're taking back and how this secondment is really working for you right now at this stage in your career. We still don't have any questions popping up yet, so please do take the opportunity. Someone might want to ask Jamie what sorts of jobs exist for the Royal Navy in the desert, which he mentioned. I'm quite intrigued by this, but this is perhaps too secret to share on an open forum. I don't know. So let me just move on to our final or penultimate slide and just talk a little bit now about how you can get involved with secondments. So you've heard from Gillian, Emma and Jamie about how Interchange can be valuable both for organisations and also valuable and rewarding for individuals as well. So hopefully, as a result of all that, you're interested in learning more about Interchange, and there's a number of things that you can do if that's the case. Firstly, you may want to consider yourself within your organisation how Interchange can support both your personal goals but also the business of the organisation that you work in. And we've had lots and lots of examples from our three speakers and examples also from Sophie as well about how hubs have operated. So clearly there are lots of opportunities, and you may want to spend some time reflecting on which of those are most relevant for you and your organisation. You should be able to find out, if you don't know whether or not your organisation has joined the Nuclear Hub. I would suggest that you speak to the skills lead within the organisation. They will be able to tell you whether or not they've joined. If your organisation has not yet joined the Nuclear Hub, then you had information there from Sophie about how to inquire about joining, and she and her team are there to support you in doing that. Secondly, I strongly encourage you to keep track of what the Nuclear Skills Plan is doing. So you can do this in a number of ways. You can follow the plan on their LinkedIn page, and also you can go to the brilliant Destination Nuclear websites and follow the social media accounts associated with that. There will increasingly, as we grow the Interchange project, be increasingly content on there about the opportunities that people have created and benefited from. Do sign up for future webinars. Again, you can do that through the LinkedIn page. This is the second in a series. There will be more on some of the other projects that you've heard about today, and you can also sign up to a newsletter mailing list for the Nuclear Skills Plan as well. Great. You can also contact me directly, and I will make sure that my contact details are made available to you after the webinar. Right. Okay. Disappointingly, or perhaps we've just done such a good job explaining everything so very, very clearly, you don't have any questions. But I'm looking to Hannah here.
Ben, there are some.
Oh,
there's
there
a
are.
couple of
Gillian's
questions
told me.
appeared. Yes.
Yes, brilliant. No, thank you. There's a little button I click and then they appear. All right. So let me start with these then. So the first question is from Becky, and she asked, does the STEM Futures Interchange approach consider repatriation back to your employer and how to stay connected? Yes, and that point about getting lost from the employer. So I'll have a first go at this, but I'll also ask Jamie and Emma perhaps just to pop in a quick thought as well. I'm also on secondment from my home department, which is the Foreign Office, and there are things in place from my host department to keep me connected. The STEM Futures Interchange approach does consider this, but I think it's very much down to both the host, the sending organisation, the receiving organisation to put in place what's needed to help maintain those connections. So, you know, in my experience, I get the newsletter, the weekly newsletter that comes around with the corporate information. I still have access to the intranet page of my organisation, and I make an effort to stay in touch with my former colleagues as well, so that I understand what's going on. Also encouraged, and this might be relevant for others, also encouraged to have a more senior colleague in my sending department, so for me the Foreign Office, who takes an interest in what I'm doing on Interchange, and is therefore asking the right questions of me, making sure that the organisation is thinking about how to make use of the skills that hopefully I will bring back. But let me turn to Emma first. Emma, how are you staying in touch with Ricardo?
Yeah, good question. So we actually still keep our team leads in Ricardo. So I still have a monthly check-in with my team lead, but also what was quite nice is I still get the invites for my broader team meeting. I often don't have time to go, but I could go if I wanted to. So if you want to check in terms of what's happening recently, that is still in my Ricardo calendar. So not sort of completely cut off. And it's nice having the check-in with your team lead as well, just to have feedback on what you've been working on.
Great stuff. Jamie, anything to add?
I'm the same. I've got a monthly tempo of meetings with a line manager back in the Navy, and yeah, as I mentioned, there's quite senior leadership interest in the project, so I quite regularly get requests from left field to talk to some senior officers as well. But yeah, I suppose for me, I'm not probably going to get lost just because the Navy work on a 2-year cycle of jobs anyway, so the Navy are expecting to put me in a different job at the end. So I'm unlikely to get completely lost. I'm sure they'll start working out where I'm going to go next quite soon.
Sure they will. Great. All right.
Ben, can I just add to that one as well? I think certainly from a Babcock perspective, we've kind of realised that it's helpful to set expectations at the beginning. So having some guidance that can go to the secondees, Babcock line manager, to say, look, this is happening. Here's some of the practical things that you need to think about whilst your valued team member is away on secondment. So as well as the practical stuff like, well, what's going to happen? Are they going to have 2 laptops? How do we deal with this? It's to talk about having that tempo of meetings, because the person is still your team member, even though they're elsewhere. And like anybody else who might be off on maternity, paternity, or any other kinds of leave, there'd be an expectation that there's some kind of keeping in touch process. So it's about trying to make sure that a manager doesn't think, oh, I'm not allowed to talk to my person because they're going working somewhere else. That's not what it's about. So it's just being clear from both sides what kind of level of communication feels about right, and making sure that people feel included. So yeah, I think as organisations get more involved in dealing with interchanges, they get a bit more sophisticated in terms of what guidance do we need to give to people to make sure that we're making the most of this.
Yeah, no, thanks very much, Gillian. I think, as you say, as interchange becomes more embedded across the sector, there'll be some degree of a kind of cultural shift that ensures that interchange is more readily thought of as a career opportunity and a benefit for sending organisations, and then the processes as well. And I think there's space for us within the Nuclear Hub to have those conversations and share the kind of best practice that Babcock is doing on ensuring that people are supported on those secondments. Mark McBride has asked a question about the functioning of the Nuclear Hub. So I'm happy to say something about this, but I wonder, Sophie, do you want to kick us off? Mark's question is, how will interchange opportunities be identified in the Nuclear Hub? Will they be strategically driven, or will individual organisations seek and offer interchange opportunities at a more tactical level? Of course, our hub is new, but you've got experience of others. So do you want to say something on that?
Yeah, of course. So it is very different in all of the different hubs. It kind of depends on the circumstances of which they've been set up. So with the Nuclear Hub, for example, with it being brand new, the organisations that are joining the hub can essentially shape it themselves and focus on what suits them. Everyone's going to come to that first hub meeting with different interests. And I think that the first few meetings will probably really be about scoping out exactly what every organisation wants from the hub, and then figuring out what the future direction would be. But in terms of some of the hubs that we already have, the Data Hub, for example, they sort of started from scratch with all new representatives from when Go Science took over the scheme. And they recognised that one of the key barriers to developing opportunities was the fact they didn't really have relationships initially. So that's why they very much focused on that. And now they've all sort of come to the conclusion that secondments is a really good way for them to take the hub forward. So they very much developed strategies to make sure that can happen. But yeah, it's very different in all the organisations. We at Go Science aren't going to say exactly what the hub needs to be focusing on. It's entirely up to the organisations that make up that hub. So yeah, the way in which you engage with it is entirely up to you.
Excellent, thank you very much. Yeah, and certainly endorse all of that. I think it's really important that the hub delivers for the organisations that are participating, those that represent the sector. So it will be very much a kind of collegiate approach where we identify the opportunities collectively, rather than this being something that is centrally driven. I've got a couple more questions. So a question from Thomas Doherty. What are your plans to improve connections with the civil-focused private employers? So I will say a little bit about this. So the National Nuclear Strategic Plan for Skills is one that covers the sector. So this is a sector plan that is civil and nuclear. In terms of governance, you see both civil and nuclear running all the way through the governance of the plan. So alongside defence companies such as Babcock, we also have participation of a number of companies and organisations working civil nuclear. DESNZ is signed up to the Nuclear Hub itself as well. Looking at the invite list for our first hub meeting on the 12th of December, we have individuals from a real mix of organisations, and they are pretty much exactly split 50-50 between civil and defence. So this is first point, is this is this is across the whole sector and is designed to improve mobility between civil and defence. In terms of how that's done, that will be done in the hub and through the hub structures. And one of the things I'm particularly keen we do is create, because I think this is the newer part of it, create those opportunities for individuals to move across temporarily from defence to civil and vice versa, because I think this is certainly an area which is less well tapped than we have existing, certainly on the defence side. So I hope that partly answers your question, Thomas. Yeah, thank you very much, and thumbs up from John as well to endorse that. That's great, thanks, John. Unless anyone else wants to jump in on that point, I will go to a question from I'm not sorry, Simon, you can't speak. I don't know if you're Perry Simon or Simon Perry. I should know this, but I'm sorry for not knowing. Do we have a scenario yet where someone in Interchange wanted to stay with the organisation department they're visiting, or were offered a new permanent role by the organisation they're visiting? And if so, how is this managed? So it's a great question. There's always a bit of a sort of sense of peril in this, I'm sure, from organisations that they will have their staff poached. I think Sophie can reassure us on this point. Sophie.
Yeah, so it's not something that I've heard happen before or anyone's reported back to me, but the framework agreement is written really flexibly, so you can essentially fully agree before a secondment or any sort of opportunity is arranged how that might work or what it might look like. So within one of the annexes, there's definitely a section where you can mutually agree a period of time after the secondment has taken place where the secondee has to stay in their parent organisation. It's entirely up to you whether or not you want to use it. You could agree that the mutually agreeable period is 0 months if you want. I think it covers up to 18 months in the framework agreement, but again, it's entirely flexible, so you can have that conversation with the organisation you're partnering with in advance of the secondment starting.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Sophie. So that is written into that agreement then that participating organisations sign up to. So Simon, thank you very much for your question. We have a minute left. So yes, indeed, like an Interchange prenup. Yeah, that's exactly right. So I think we're with that point. I think we are now at time. So I want to say a very big thank you to Gillian, to Jamie, to Emma, and to Sophie for their contributions and sharing with us their insights. I want to say a big thank you to Hannah for managing everything behind the scenes and ensuring that things run smoothly. And I want to thank all of you for taking time out to participate. We've had really good numbers and most of you have stayed through to the end, so thank you very much indeed. We will share more information about Interchange with you, including those important contact details and those links as well. So with that, thank you very much and enjoy the rest of your week.